Hi, I am Kevin Quigley, and welcome to Tarot Off the Cuff. I picked up my first tarot deck in 1982 when I was 12 years old. I spent the summer giving readings to my friends and kind of freaking them out, and then I misplaced it. Maybe 15 years later, I picked up another tarot deck, and I've been reading professionally pretty much since then. I'm a composer, I'm an artist, I'm a teacher, and I sort of combine all of those kinds of elements together. Tarot reading for me is about building up a conversation. So a conversation not just between myself and my client, but between our higher selves, so that we might bring down some information that might help make us a little bit more conscious and maybe even our lives a little bit better. Hey everybody, I'm Kevin Quigley. I'm here with Tarot Off the Cuff. I've got the Gaian Tarot, Joann Powell Colbert's Gaian Tarot. This is the very, very first edition that she made in my hands. I'm going to give it a couple of mixings and we'll pull a card and we'll get started. Okay, so I have pulled the Ace of Fire. It's a nice card. This is the first one I'm doing, although we don't necessarily post these in order, but with the Ace of Fire, that brings me to the suit of wands. It's the traditional suit of wands, and Joanna has renamed the suit in this fabulous deck. This is my main reading deck and has been for a decade. She's replaced the suit of all of the suits with elemental attribution, so wands and fire go together here. So this would be the Ace of Wands. Wands for me is about inspiration, creative energy. It's about drive. It's about our connection with the cosmos and God in whatever form you understand him or her to be. Or it, why don't I say that, right? And the other suits all have different attributions, and most of them, she's using the most common ones as well. So I won't go too deep into the deck, but we'll talk about the Ace of Fire here. And aces. Many readers like to think of aces as the fullness of a suit, the complete idea, everything that's contained therein. This is a very whole to the parts kind of approach where you start with everything and then you chop it down and divide it into smaller and smaller, more granular pieces, so that by the time you get to the 10, you have the most sort of manifest or the most broken apart idea of what that is, maybe even the furthest from the divine. Some other readers start with the aces as the beginning or the first or the primal impulse of a particular suit's energy. And as we move on towards the 10, we get to a bit of a culmination. I actually wax and wane with these. I go both directions, and sometimes my intuition tells me which way I'm going to go with a particular suit. But this one leads me into a particular story. So I'm thinking about impulse right now. So what happens during a reading, when you're doing a reading and you are struck by a creative impulse, maybe to even do something a little outlandish or a little strange, or to change your technique, or to alter the way you interpret a particular card, right? So these things happen. I would say that those of us that make sort of a scholarly study of working with the tarot, that work with technique, we read books, we want to learn all the different traditional translations of a particular card and things like that, oftentimes find it hard to be spontaneous when one is reading. And if, on the other hand, then you come from the other direction and that you're a very intuitive reader, and maybe you've never read a book at all, you just pick up the cards and you sort of understand them and they understand you, especially for those readers that have found a particular deck that they love. But even more, this would apply to those readers that can pick up almost any other deck, maybe even a deck of just regular old playing cards to read with those. Oftentimes those readers are very comfortable with changing things up and going with what they feel or what their impressions, right? So here's a particular story that I think I'll tell. I was at a tarot convention, and this particular tarot convention likes to start with initial baseline reading. So you partner up with people, and it's recommended in general, or at least I try to follow this idea of that. If I'm going to do a reading like this, I want to read for someone that I don't know very well. I like or discover that I learn more when I read for other people, especially other readers that I don't know, because I'm gonna come across something I haven't seen before. Whereas the other tarot readers that I know well, and would see fairly often at gatherings or talk to online and things like that, while they're great readers, and I love doing reading exchanges, I know who they are and I know how they think and all of that sort of stuff. So somebody that's a complete blank slate for me is an interesting gift that a convention can sometimes give. So in this case, I happen to be sitting, and in that case, I also generally try to sit down at a table where there's people I don't know whenever I can, right? So in this case, I was sitting next to a rather conservative woman who I'm going to guess was in her 60s or early 70s. And she had crossed the ocean. We were in the United States for this convention, and she came from Wales. I liked her a lot. We had good conversation and stuff before all the events got ready to go, and we were comfortable with reading for each other when we sat down to do our reading exchange. And it turned out that she was actually not a big tarot reader. She was reading with angel cards and using channeling to bring angelic thoughts and counsel through, which was cool and great. I loved it. So she did a reading for me that was unusual by tarot standards, but really quite interesting, and I could tell that it was a little bit inside of the box for her. This was how she worked, right? Which is most of the time exactly what I'm going to do in this kind of a situation. I'm going to use the skills I've got. I'm going to read the way I read, right? I find that's useful and yada yada. However, I shuffled the cards and I reached down to the deck to pull the first card off the top, and I was going to set it down on the table. You only have a few minutes, so I had decided to do a 3-card reading in this case. And for that, I've got a number of different spreads that I'll use, that the ways I work with 3 cards, right? Most of us probably have several of those in our back pocket. And I looked over and I could tell that she was a little bit nervous, that maybe she hadn't had another person read for her before. And one of the things that we had talked about just in sort of getting to know each other earlier in the afternoon was that the reason she came here and the reason she chose tarot instead of something more familiar with the way she worked was that she wanted to sort of crack herself open and find some new stuff, right? So instead of laying the cards down on the table in a nice controlled spread, which at that time, this was 20 years ago, was the way I was most comfortable reading, I literally threw the card into the air just willy-nilly with no care about where it was going to land. I grabbed another card really quickly and I threw it again, and I took the third and I threw it. And they went flying. They spun through the air. It kind of distracted some of the other people. They all looked over to see what we were doing. And she was shocked. Right? And I said, I know this is shocking and weird. I haven't done this before, but I feel really drawn to just do this. And let's take a look. So we looked around at the table. We found one of the cards landed face up over by her glass of water. We found another card landed on the floor, and it had sort of tucked itself underneath between the foot of her chair and the carpeting. It had slid underneath there, and that one was face down. And then the third card flew sort of across the room and was about 6 feet away, face down, sort of in the middle of nowhere. Nobody was walking around there. There were no other tables over there. It was just sort of a cleared space in the room. So I let it sit, but it was face down and quite some distance away, right? And as that happened, I realized that, oh my gosh, this is fascinating. Now I can read not just where the cards landed, but how they got to where they went. So the first one that I threw was the one that landed underneath the chair and face down. So I said, we're going to save that one, but we want to know that that was the first one. It's hiding a little bit, but it feels to me like it's a little bit in your back pocket. It's something that you already sort of own. It's your foundation. You sort of sit on it, and it's a important piece for you. than this one that's right in front of you, not under, but it was next to your glass of water, this sustenance, and it was face up, and I don't actually even remember what the card was. It was so long ago. This one feels to me like it is the thing that's calling out. It really wants the attention. So we'll talk about that one first. And that one that's all the way over there, it's almost 10 feet away from us. That for me is going to be it feels to me it's the card you're heading towards. It's the distant thing that, I already know that you're sort of stepping out into this space, doing some work that you're a little nervous about, but you feel really confident in doing and all of that. So that's fun and great, right? We had a fabulous reading, and that particular technique is something that I spent some time writing about, and now I'll go teach master classes at other conventions and things like that. Maybe I'll do a master class for that technique online. I call it tossing tarot. It was written about in one of the Llewellyn annual readers. They did these, I think, 3 years in a row, maybe a few more. If you look them up on Amazon, you can find that particular article if you're really interested in how that works. Or put a comment down below the video to let me know that a masterclass in tossing tarot is something you might be interested in. But the idea is that with those Ace of Wands, I was in a moment where, boom, I was inspired to make something new happen. And I just went with it, and boy, did it work. It really worked. It not only was a good reading for her, it was a good and fun and enjoyable, memorable reading for me. And then it actually led to a whole new technique that I use in my practice. When I feel that I need it, or when I feel that I've got somebody that's sitting down at the table with me that's really fun, and is ready to have something sort of jarring happen, something exciting and jarring happen. Sometimes, and I'll admit even, I've used it a few times when I've had somebody sort of sleepy sit down and I could tell that they weren't necessarily awake, and in that case I won't even give them a warning. I'll just toss a card, and then I'll watch it. Boom, there it is. And then I'll just pay attention, give it a moment of silence and sit. If that kind of thing, if I'm using that in a fast 5 or 10 minute sort of fair reading, sometimes only one card is all we need, because how it got there and where it landed and what's its around and all of that, like what is near the card, then becomes really important and interesting, right? So I know that was a very tight little nugget, but the piece of that is I would suggest that when you're reading tarot, not just for yourself, but also for clients with other people in action, don't be afraid to jump and follow inspiration when it strikes. I'm Kevin Quigley. This is Tarot Off the Cuff, and we will see you soon. Hey, this is Kevin.
Hi, this is Nooch.
Thanks for watching.
If you like what you saw, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe. You'll know when new ones are coming. And share with your friends.
We'll see you soon.